Greetings, friends, and welcome to the Gospel Underground podcast. This is episode 116, A Hitchhiker's Guide to the Question of God. I'm Reed Monahan, broadcasting live, live for me from the worldwide headquarters of the Gospel Underground here in Blacksburg, Virginia. Man, it's good to be with you guys today. I'm here solo again. I've got a fun episode planned for you today. We had hoped to had launched our series on human embodiment by now, but we've kind of had some really good episodes to throw in here and there. And to be honest, I've been doing research. Let me show you this. I get a stack of books, so I'm not an idiot on some topics. So I've got, Love My Body, Pure, See What It Means to Be Human, Embodied by Greg Allison, all kinds of fun stuff here in the research queue. We're actually prepared to launch that series, but Jesse's family's been a little under the weather, and so we decided to wait a few more days to get on that next week. And so today, I'm kind of fired up, man. I've had a good week. It's been a profound week for our family. My son Thomas was baptized on Sunday. He kind of made a commitment and said, hey, it's time. I need to take that step to publicly profess my faith in Jesus and to identify with the Lord's covenant promises, right, to his people by being buried with him in baptism and raised to walk in newness of life. Now, that's my third kid. My daughters were baptized roughly around 12 years old up in, as my friend Ted Stark, shout out Ted, said, the New Jersey Swamp Lake, where Ted was baptized as well as my daughters. There was a state park where we used to do baptism, and one year, I guess the bathrooms at the park, sewage backed up into the lake, but we were out of there by then. Thank God for that. But so Tommy was baptized. I'm speaking again this evening at Washington and Lee University at InterVarsity Christian Fellowship, where my daughter is a second-year student. I'm doing a two-part thing there. I did one last week and then this week on A Hitchhiker's Guide to the Question of God. So I'm going to share with you guys some of the things I'll be sharing with the college students tonight. It's a kind of a fun little message that I've developed years ago and evolved over time just to share with young people who might be searching or questioning. So embodiment, it is coming, but not quite yet. But today, I do have a little discussion. Reviewish is back. It's time for Reviewish. Because I'm having technological challenges that are giving me a little bit of a headache today. I was wondering if I was even going to be able to get technology off the ground. So Reviewish, a couple things. Some of you know from either my Twitter or previous podcasts that I'm making a massive switch in life where I'm actually going to use a computer that has fruit on it, like a piece of fruit on the back, an Apple MacBook Pro. I ordered it, almost a month ago. Been slow coming, and I also ordered a new external screen, like right up here. I'm looking at one. My other external screen was about 5 years old, and so I wanted to get something a little crisper, a little nicer, a little smaller too. This is a 24-incher that I'm looking at. This is the LG Ultrafine 4K monitor. Well, my Reviewish of it, it's the best-looking monitor I've ever seen. Looking at the quality of the screen, but at the same time, it's a little frustrating because I'm still using a Microsoft Surface Pro kind of tablet laptop hybrid that I've had for a little over 3 years, and apparently this LG monitor is a little snobby. It won't take signals unless you have some monster driving technology. Obviously, when you're plugging things in, you got to know if it's HDMI. You can't plug HDMI into this. It's all Thunderbolt 3 or USB-C. And apparently, there's nothing that I can do to make this Surface Pro work with that. So, and I'm waiting on that MacBook Pro, which apparently, I guess they're off in shipping containers off the coast of California, Long Beach, where no ships can come home, apparently. But I do suspect that laptop will be here within a week. And guys, I have a lot to share with you as I go through a technologically frustrating times after being a DOS and a Windows 3, Windows 3.1, Windows 95 on all the Windows that have come, and Windows 11, which is a little bit glitchy on Zoom with using the Zoom app right now on my laptop. I will be switching to Mac OS. I do want, if you're a friendly person and not a Mac worshiper, obnoxious person, I don't like those kind of people, man. Like the religious Apple people, right? They think, oh, you finally arrived. I was like, no, I finally got a MacBook because the 20-hour battery life, and it's finally a lot faster and superior technology. That's the only reason. But if you are a friendly Apple fruit computer person and you'd like to give me tips if you've made a similar switch from 3 decades for me using PCs. I used to teach programming on a Mac as a TA, undergrad TA in an intro to programming class at UNC. It was old Macs though, right? It wasn't anything like we have today. So I'm making that switch. If you got any tips, pointers, anything, let me know, and I would love to learn from you. Well, guys, today I want to talk to you about this. This would be helpful to you, perhaps, if you're listening to the podcast and maybe you're interested in the question of God. Maybe you're not sure what you believe about God or Jesus, and a friend kind of recommended this to you. Or maybe you're like me. You're a follower of Jesus, but you care about your skeptical friends and you care about helping others along the journey, so to speak, to understand the gospel, the good news of Jesus Christ, and even why, right, the question whether God is real really matters. And so I've always looked at my own spiritual journey. If you guys look back to, I think, episode, 114, I think maybe, no, 113. My friend Mike Exenkemper was on here, and we talked about the time when he met me and introduced me to Jesus Christ and my little bit of my testimony. Well, but after coming to faith, I had all sorts of questions. And so, obviously, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Question of God, that's a little takeoff on, Douglas Adams' radio drama, book, movie, British comedy franchise, A Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, where, an intergalactic freeway is being put through the Earth and they're going to blow up the Earth. And this guy goes on this journey to try to stop it. But so it's a little bit of knockoff of that. I do think life is much more like a journey than just asking questions. And so you ask questions on a road. And so life isn't a thought experiment or just thinking. It's living, it's loving, it's interacting while we have questions. And I think the question of God is one of the most important. And so if you're listening to me today, I want to encourage a few things. First of all, any hitchhiker worth their salt, right, has a few striking characteristics, right? They're a little bit bold. Today, hitchhiking is a little out of vogue. Generation before mine, my high school wrestling coach hitchhiked from New Jersey to the University of Virginia to go to college. Hey, throw a bag on and going to play football and wrestle, and I'm just going to hitchhike to UVA. A little different, right? Today, that's a little bit scary. We're worried about somebody driving up with a white van or something and doing something bad to us. But hitchhiking is pretty adventurous. But so if you want to be a hitchhiker to ask questions about, is God real? I want to give you two principles that I think matter to be a good hitchhiker on the question of God. First of all, is an open mind. I'm concerned many times people might be closed-minded, maybe because of their upbringing. Maybe they grew up secular. Maybe they grew up and they're rejecting their kind of certain kind of Christianity that they saw as a kid. You need an open mind, right? If you feel like you're closed off to the question of God, I want to at least ask you, why is that? And then maybe open up to the possibility, right, that God might be the realest real that there is. So an open mind. And secondly, to be a good hitchhiker, the question of God, you need an open road. In other words, you need to be able to ask the question, if God is real, then what? And so for me, these two questions, is God real, right? And my answer to that is a resounding, I believe that with all my heart, that God is real. And then secondly, has God ever shown up? Because that gets into the question of like, okay, there's a creator, or there's an ultimate source of goodness, or there's a divine spark plug in the sky. It's much different to identify the deity, so to speak, in a real personal way. And that's where I really encountered the person of Jesus. So today I want you to think, is God real, right? And has God ever shown up in a significant way as we look at Jesus of Nazareth? Now, I'm going to structure this question, is God real, with 4 questions. There's many people in time and history who've asked these kind of existential, experiential kind of questions that matter about our existence, right? And I didn't do this on purpose, but when I came out with these 4 questions, they turned out to be OMG. Hope. So you can say this like a teenage girl if you like. My daughter got a kick out of that. She goes, Dad, you didn't do OMG, hope. I was like, yeah, I did, apparently. Origin, meaning, goodness, right? And then hope. Origin, where do we come from? Meaning, what makes life meaningful? Is it just a meaningless bumping of atoms and then you're dead? Hallelujah, amen. There's nothing more. Meaning, goodness, right? We've done a whole series of podcasts. I won't labor that today on the problem of goodness. Is goodness real? If it is, if there's such a thing as goodness and morality and justice, that begs the question of from whence does that come? And then finally, hope. How do we look to the future with a sense of hope and not just a sense of foreboding or anxiety, that we could have strong confidence about the future in a significant way? And so question of origin is interesting to me because my conversion to Christianity happened almost simultaneously while I was doing the first couple years of a bachelor's of science in physics. Now, I did not finish a physics degree. I did 3 years of a physics degree, and I had a professor named Sean Washburn who asked a group of us, hey, do you guys want to be physicists? And we weren't sure of that. He goes, hey, we have a new applied sciences department. You guys could hop into all your classes, go over, because in 3 years, I was just, I think, advanced quantum mechanics and maybe one thermodynamics class from finishing the physics degree. So I hopped over to an applied science degree with an emphasis in computer science, hardware, software, and took a minor in physics. But my conversion, right, was happening at the time I was studying what I call the hard sciences, as opposed to the soft sciences of the humanities per se. Mathematically based sciences, or as physics people would say, the only real science. And so one of the things that helped me with the question of God is looking at the origin of the universe. You see, in the 20th century, the discipline of cosmology, right, where does the cosmos and the universe come from, or studying the far reaches of both the universe currently and its distant past, cosmology greatly confirmed that the past, or time, is finite. You guys don't realize this probably, but before the idea of the Big Bang, a lot of times people say, well, I don't like the Big Bang. Well, the Big Bang is a very theistic idea. The Big Bang actually looked at certain shifts in the electromagnetic spectrum, certainly in the electromagnetic spectrum lane of red light, and saw something called a red shift. And I won't get into the physics of it too much, but it shows an expansion, which leading back pointed to kind of like this primordial explosion. In other words, there was an expansion of space-time back into what you call a singularity that, scientists like to say like 13.77 billion years ago, the universe exploded into being. Well, if there is a time equals zero, okay, and if you're going to date the universe in any certain way, you're saying there is a time equals zero, the first moment of the Big Bang, so to speak. In light of that idea that time began, this begs a strong question, right, about the origins of the universe. Now, we read the Bible and we come across, in the beginning, God created heaven and the earth. Well, science and philosophy, I think, strongly confirm the testimony of Scripture that there is indeed a beginning. And of course, from my perspective, that begs the question of a first cause, a first mover, an Aristotelian thought, a first cause. And thinkers throughout history have wrestled with this, that if something begins to exist, right, we ask questions about what caused it. If I were to be sitting here and all of a sudden this coffee cup, I'm actually drinking some iced coffee today. I don't know why I was free in a parking lot where I got my haircut this morning. If Space Rabbits, a food truck coffee, if I were to see this pop into existence on my table from nothing, right? Like, boom, all of a sudden a coffee cup. I am right scientifically, philosophically, commonsensically to ask why. Why did that happen? I would ask for what caused it, what initial conditions led to the popping into existence of this coffee. And here with the universe, we're talking about the beginning of everything, right? Before which there was quite literally no thing, or what we would say metaphysical nothing, or what Aristotle said, nothing is that which rocks dream about. If that's the case, we are right to ask for a cause for the beginning. And I do think that asks and begs the question of God. Obviously, the Bible teaches us in the beginning, God created origins is very close to the idea of a creator. Secondly, OMG Hope, meaning is life meaningless? You see, there was a great shift for a lot of thinkers when they started saying, well, maybe there are no deities, there's no God, there's no purpose, there's no meaning. Writers like Beckett writing Waiting for Godot, this kind of theater of the absurd, right? There's two dudes waiting for some person named Godot. They don't know why. They're just there waiting. It seems like it's an absurd operation. And if you track that out to life, right, what are we doing here? I don't know. We're just here. Life becomes absurd if there's really no meaning to it. Now, Jean-Paul Sartre, existentialist, playwright, philosopher, 20th century, wrote things like Nausea, the other work, No Exit, where he kind of looks at just this absurdity and emptiness of life, of what we've discovered. Wow, we're just bumping atoms coming from nowhere, going nowhere. We're all going to be dead. Why are we doing any of this? The universe doesn't give a rip about us. What is the meaning of it all? Or certain comedic treatments of it, like Doug Adams' Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, where, on his long journey, we find out this, the universe is being run by two mice. And when the question of the meaning of life and everything else, what is the answer to that, comes out, the answer turns out to be, for those of you who know, 42. What does that mean? Well, it's meaningless. We don't really see. But Jean-Paul Sartre, in his book Nausea, this is a compilation of two quotes that Tim Keller puts together in his book, The Reason for God, Belief in an Age of Skepticism. Jean-Paul Sartre says, "It was true, I had always realized that I hadn't any right to exist at all. I had appeared by chance." Now, we got to watch when people say stuff happens by chance, right? Chance is a description of probability or outcomes. Chance is impotent. It has no causal power, can't do anything. But I had appeared by chance. I existed like a stone, a plant, a microbe. I could feel nothing to myself but an inconsequential buzzing. I was thinking that here we are eating and drinking to preserve our precious existence, and that there's nothing, absolutely no reason for existence. Now, nobody can live life that way. It's pretty depressing, right? Let's all go jump off the Brooklyn Bridge. But the modern world, in light of that, has then said, well, maybe there is no meaning to life. I'll have to create it, right? Maybe I'll like the Pittsburgh Steelers or quantum mechanics or politics. And we find tribal meanings, right? Localized meanings that we generate for ourselves. The only problem is that you better not know that ultimately it's all ridiculous meaninglessness all the way down. Sean Carroll, a physicist from Caltech, who wrote a book in 2016 called The Big Picture. Sean Carroll has a podcast called the Mindscape Podcast that I listen to, not weekly, but pretty, whenever there's an interesting looking thing, I listen to Sean Carroll a lot. I do that because I consider him an intelligent atheist and also a smug one. He's kind of cocky. He thinks his philosophical naturalism is true all the way up and down. And so he's just, he's smarter than you. But it's just a fascinating podcast because he does have smart people talking about different things. We'll reviewish an episode of that next time for you. But he wrote a book called The Big Picture. And in this book, he's trying to deal with life and meaning and our place in the universe from a perfectly no God, philosophically naturalism worldview. And he says this: we humans are blobs of organized mud, which through the impersonal, right, don't care about you, workings of nature's patterns have developed the capacity to contemplate and cherish and engage with the intimidating complexity of the world around us. The meaning we find in life is not transcendent, right? Okay, so I don't know. There's a lot of moral and value language in this, but like, hey, we can contemplate, think about, cherish, love, and engage with what the intimidating, I don't know why it's intimidatingly complex, but I guess it is to some people to aggrandize the universe. The meaning we find ain't out there. The meaning has to be generated, created, or whatever. That's kind of the idea. So there's no purpose, get over it, but maybe fill your lives with local meaning. Well, course, that meaning might infringe on someone else's, like Pittsburgh Steelers, Dallas Cowboys fans, or even more, like global conflict. So we're left scratching our heads for what we're even doing. Why? We might even say, hey, live for the common good. But many people would ask, why is that? Why should I choose to do that? Why don't I live for my good if I'm living for my meaning? The common good is no good to us if we have no good in common. Refer back to the series we did this past year on meaning and the good and the scientific quest to understand the good from a perspective of no God. We can't say there is a common good if we have no good in common. Now, there are two clues, I think, and I think C.S. Lewis was very helpful in this line of thinking. We do have two clues to meaning, or what makes life meaningful. The first one is love, right? Relationship. We're made to love and be loved. This seems central to human beings. This is extended in the Christian tradition to being loved by God, right? The universe, we could say, is either personal or impersonal. And if the centrality of love is a pointer to life and meaning, it seems like the universe is not, as Sean Carroll would say, impersonal mud, but a personal place in reality filled with persons and places and people to love. Second clue for meaning, first one, love is worship, that all of us worship, right? We worship sports teams, we worship money, we worship, girlfriend, boyfriend, rock stars, celebrities, movie stars, our favorite politicians. People get caught up in this stuff, man. This is partially God's design. He made us to be completed by worship, right? But also complicated by our sinfulness, that we worship the wrong stuff, right? We worship money and people and things and then it just turns into a mess. It twists our own heart, right? And that if we're made to worship God, this is a great clue to the meaning of our existence. Maybe we're made for that. And C.S. Lewis was great in saying how worship used to bother him, right? It's like, why does this God demand our worship? What is he, lonely, he's selfish? What is it? But in realizing that worship, our delight in something, like when you go see your football team win, right? When I see Manchester United not suck, they suck really bad right now, but when I see them win, it feels great, right? That the worship of something completes the experience for us and gives us a sense of fulfillment. And the Bible says that God delights, right, in the praises of his people. Love and worship. I think these are clues to meaning. Our desire for meaning, transcendent meaning, which human beings seem to be quite caught up with all over time in history. Meaning itself is a clue to the question of God. So origin, meaning, and then third, OMG, goodness, right? Goodness. I won't labor this here on the podcast because we did multiple episodes on the importance of goodness. Our modern world is very much suffering because we have no agreement on what is objectively good and evil, but yet we still care about it, and so we demonize one another. We go crazy on each other. An interesting fact from history that I'll bring up here is that you guys are familiar with Google, right? I'm old enough. I guess I'm older, middle-aged now. I'm old enough to remember a pre-Google world. I like the post-Google world where you can ask questions to a software algorithm that can search, all this indexed information and give you answers. Some things you Google get good answers. Sometimes you don't. We still need people to actually know what they're talking about in the world and not just saying, I found this on the internet, on the Google or on the Twitter, right? Or on the Facebook. Lord help us. But before Google, it was, you had to get a book or go to the library to learn things, right? And so the interesting thing about Google, though, I'm not going to comment just on their technology, but one of the founders of Google was named Sergey Brin. The other one was named Larry Page. And they had a mantra early on. It's not shared as much anymore, but early on, one of Google's guiding principles, part of their culture was don't be evil. Now, they were coming out of the, Microsoft getting sued and Microsoft being a technological evil empire, I think, and they were kind of stick it to the man, small startup kind of ethos. But there was an interesting thing that happened over time. Somebody actually asked them a question, right? This was an interview in Wired magazine in 2003. It was called Google vs. Evil. And CEO at the time, Eric Schmidt, was asked, right, what being evil was. And his reply was very candid, very honest, is whatever Sergey says is evil. Now, this reveals to us an important clue that we do care about good and evil, and that's, I think, designed by God. But it also reveals, another problem. Who gets to say, right, who is right in the world? Is it really up to Sergey? Is it up to you? Is it up to me? Is whatever Sergey says is evil? Evil? And let me just make this cautious qualification. Unless Sergey is God, we have a massive problem on our hands, right? Our obsessive reality, knowing the world is broken, that there's some evil going down, it needs to be fixed. We need to change the world, right? This is the thought of every generation. Nobody thinks, it's just perfect just the way it is. What's behind this question? I do think it's a clue to the question of God. In fact, we realize that the world should be different, that it ought to be different. And I love a quote by G.K. Chesterton here from his book, Orthodoxy. He said, "My haunting instinct was that somehow good, right, was not merely a tool to be used, but a relic to be guarded, something precious. Like the goods from Crusoe's ship, even that had been a wild whisper of something originally wise. For according to Christianity, we were indeed survivors of a wreck, the crew of a golden ship that had gone down before the beginning." You see, the question of God, when you come to this idea of why is the world so broken, but we see such wonderful goodness everywhere, all around, Chesterton compares it to a shipwreck. And that we realize that what could have been, what once was lost, paradise lost. And that the reality is we do need fixing and redemption. Now, that makes no sense from a philosophical naturalism point of view. What is up or down? What is getting better? What is good? We're just atoms bumping in energy. There is no transcendent cause or meaning, no transcendent morality. Check with Sean Carroll. He'll tell you this. And in light of that, how do we come out of this bog of nothingness? Well, perhaps the good is real. And if that's the case, it does show a strong clue and pointer in the question of God. The Bible says that all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. I find that to be true description of reality. So, origin, meaning, goodness, OMG, and then finally, hope. This is a quote, a long quote, that's from an author named Blaise Pascal. Pascal wrote a book in French. It was titled Pensées, basically thinking or my thoughts. He was a brilliant mathematician, but also a philosopher who converted right to Christianity. And I think this quote has always haunted me a bit because it kind of it's an old work, I think 17th century work, but it's so relevant to every age of human experience, even more so in our day of YouTube and Facebook, Instagram, all the distractions we have and the gazillions of channels and streaming services and all the things that we have. The question of God matters because it has a lot to do, right, with our confidence as we look towards the future and hope. And let the words of Pascal challenge you here deeply. He says, "I know not who put me in the world." Could be chance, right? "Nor what the world is, nor what I myself am. I am in terrible ignorance of everything. I know not what my body is, nor my senses, nor my soul, not even the part of me which thinks what I say, which reflects all and on itself consciousness, and knows itself no more than the rest. I see those frightful spaces of the universe which surround me, and I find myself tied to one corner of this vast expanse without knowing why I am put in this place rather than another, nor why the short time which is given to me that's been assigned to me at this point rather than at another, in the whole of eternity which was before me and will come after me. I see nothing but infinites on all sides which surround me as a mere atom and as a shadow which endures only for an instant and returns no more. All that I know is that I must soon die. But what I know least of is this very death which I cannot escape. As I know not from where I come, and I know not whither I go, I know only that in leaving this world I will fall forever into annihilation, right, nothingness, or into the hands of an angry God, without knowing to which of these states I shall be forever assigned. Such is my state, full of weakness and uncertainty. And from all this, and guys, please just hear this, feel this. And from all this, I conclude that I ought to spend all the days of my life without caring to inquire into what must happen to me. Perhaps I might find some solution to my doubts, but I will not take the trouble nor take a step to seek it. And after treating with scorn those who are concerned with this care, I will go without foresight and without fear to try that great event and let myself be led carelessly to death, uncertainty of my eternal and future state. He's like, hey, man, maybe I could find a solution to the future, because the future, right, has death involved in it for us, right? We're going to die. Perhaps I could look into that. He goes, like, nah, let's just play video games, or let's just watch some more TV. Let's make some more money. Hey, we got new money. We got Bitcoins now. Let's stay perpetually distracted, full of emptiness, and not reflecting on the question of God, our lives, and eternity. Many wise people from the past, both recent past, like business books that say begin with the end in mind, right? Hey, figure out the end and then head on a journey. Or Søren Kierkegaard, the Danish existential philosopher, that said life is best understood backwards and then lived forwards. The question of hope, the question of future, the question of destiny is very vital to the human being. So, origin, what is the origin of the universe and intelligent life, my life? Meaning, does it have any meaning at all? Or is it just a big farcical joke that we're going to? And the answer to the meaning of life and everything else is 42. Goodness, what is good? How ought we to live? What is the source of goodness, truth, and beauty? Why am I bound to do the good and shun evil? Well, who says that, right? Sergey Brin? Hope, what is the end of my life? Just try to make money, be happy, dead, gone, forgotten. One of the shocking things in the Old Testament is in Ecclesiastes chapter 1 says, there's no remembrance of former things, nor will there be any remembrance of later things yet to be amongst those who come after. Most likely, in 100 years, in 50 years, nobody, after you're dead, nobody's going to remember you. Maybe if you're a really big-time person, maybe a few hundred years you'll last, but there's many people, right, from all of life that completely forgotten, never to be remembered again. Is your hope in that? Oh, you're going to be great and everyone will know you and you'll live on forever in posterity. Or is there perhaps a gateway to another existence when we pass from this life to the next? Is God real? I think there are many, many good reasons to say yes. Now, here's where it gets personal. You can have an open mind to the question of God, but is the road open before you? Because if we ask the question, has God ever showed up, right? I want to just come right to the person of Jesus and say, who is this guy, right? Jesus went on with his disciples to the villages of Caesarea Philippi. This is from the Gospel of Mark, chapter 8. And on the way, he asked his disciples, who do all these people say that I am? And they told him, some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah or one of the ancient prophets. And he asked them, and quite frankly, I think he asks us, I think I'm going to ask you, but who do you say that I am? Who do you say that I am? People love to talk about Jesus still today. He is one that has not been forgotten. Far from it. He's mentioned by almost every world religion. He's got billions of people today that declare their allegiance to him. Why? See, the claims of Christianity, who do the people say that I am? Well, Eastern religions would say he's a guru, a yogi of a master of some sort, connected maybe to ultimate reality and a guide maybe to enlightenment, one of many guides. Or Jesus in Scientology, Tom Cruise religion would say he never really existed, but he exists as an implant in humanity's collective memory placed there by the alien being Xenu 75 million years ago. Thank you, Tom Cruise. What about secularism? A man who lived a long time ago, kind of a religious nut job, who taught some good things, was a little zealous, believed too much into the world, got himself into trouble. Islam's one of the greatest prophets, second greatest prophet of Islam, remembered by all the faithful, but improperly worshipped by what would be known as the infidel. Jesus today of what I call new Gnosticism or popular pop psychology, scholarship, like the Da Vinci Code, Dan Brown's book about Jesus. I'm an extremely powerful man, was most misconstrued in all history. My royal bloodline extends through my wife, who represents sacred feminine goddess, into French Merovingian kings and secretly preserved to this day by a secret society known as the Priory of Sion. That's Dan Brown's fictional account of Jesus. Or South Park, right? Long-running shows. It's amazing to me how long shows like The Simpsons and South Park have lasted. South Park Jesus, right? Fighting Satan and Santa Claus on a TV talk show set, kind of like an old Jerry Springer show. Is that who Jesus is? Bart Ehrman, who's an agnostic, I don't know if he's a hardcore atheist, but he's an agnostic, not a Christian at all, professor of New Testament at my alma mater, UNC Chapel Hill. He wrote a book engaging with some of the false history presented by the Da Vinci Code book and movie. And he said this: it is always easy for anyone to come up with a speculative, make it up, sensationalist claim about Jesus. Jesus was married. Jesus had babies. Jesus was a magician. Jesus was a Marxist. Jesus was an armed revolutionary. Jesus was gay. Jesus once asked his friends, "Who do you say that I am? Who do you say that I am?" You see, the gospel is not merely, about answering a question about God. It's knowing the heart of God. You see, the God that created all things and gives human life meaning and purpose and ultimate reality, who is the source of goodness and calls us to a certain way of life with one another, of love and worship, the one who gives us hope for eternity, right? This God stepped into the story of history. He's not just writing it as an aloof author or a world creator. He jumps into the simulation himself. God become flesh. This is who Jesus said I am. Who do you say that I am? You know what Jesus' friends and followers answered? You are the Christ, right? The chosen, anointed one of God. You are the Christ, the chosen one, the Son of the living God. That the divine became a human to display to us who God is, and not only that, to reconcile us or bring us back into relationship with God. Imagine it this way. You're the hitchhiker on the road, asking the question of God. The road is open. You have an open mind. You've been looking at the question of God in a way that you're coming convinced that God is real. And then you cut your thumb out, man. Then a car pulls up. Jesus is there. He opens the door and says, "Get in. Follow. Help build the kingdom. Let's get on the road." The beauty of the gospel of Jesus Christ, the God that is, stepped into the story, shows up to wandering, lost sheep people, hitchhikers, calls them into a relationship of love and worship with himself, and then says, let's get on the road. Let's involve ourselves in the mission, right, that God has for the world, from every tribe, tongue, people, and language, bringing a people into relationship with himself, to love and worship, to love and to serve people, to care for one another, as God uses us to bring many hitchhikers home. That's a story, guys, that I hope you know is true and good and right. And I hope you know that God is indeed calling us to himself. Not simply to be a wandering lost hitchhiker forever, but to get in the game with the question of God, in the person of God. Thanks for joining me here today, guys. The Gospel Underground is a podcast produced in partnership with the Bonhoeffer House. Review us. Now, we really mean this. Don't reviewish us. Don't say, oh, that was pretty good. Go to iTunes or wherever you get your podcast. Give us 5 stars. Write some nice things, right? Commend us to your friends. Send your comments, feedback, or questions that you want us to take up. We love doing that. You want us to talk about something? Give it some thought. Maybe get a big stack of books. Take up here on the Underground. Send us an email at info@gospelunderground.org. We are a dialogue taking place out on them roads in the borderlands between the church and culture. And if you're hitchhiking, get on in. Hope to see you out there, friends.